League One is going to be super interesting this weekend as we can find out if Birmingham City can continue their unbeaten run. Stockport County are also currently unbeaten. We're going to take a look in this video into every single fixture that's coming up this weekend. So make sure, if you have not done so already, that you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. And if you do enjoy this video, don't hesitate to hit that like button and let me know your thoughts about your team down in the comments. I'm always really intrigued to hear what fans of their own teams have to say. As a unbiased person looking at this, I think it's been a really interesting start to the campaign. The season is starting to take shape. Obviously, for some teams, there's 40 games left to go. For others, there's 41. It's going to be a really, really long second half of, well, second third of the season. It's going to be really interesting to see how it does go, and we're going to have to see what happens this weekend. But shall we get into the video? We start off with Exeter City, who face up against Stevenage at St James's Park. Now, it's going to be interesting looking into this one. Obviously, Stevenage coming off the back of that 3-0 win, while Exeter come off the back of a late defeat in their game versus Blackpool. It's going to be really interesting to see. Now, if we do look at the previous 5 fixtures for both sides, obviously Exeter City taking 3 defeats, all of them being 2-1 defeats as well to Northampton Town, Peterborough United and Blackpool, but picking up big wins against Swindon Town in a cup competition and Bolton Wanderers in the league. You look then at Stevenage, a 3-0 win over Barnsley, a 1-0 defeat to Lincoln City, a 0-0 draw with Burton Albion, a 1-0 win over Crystal Palace's Academy, EFL Trophy game, and a 2-0 defeat to Huddersfield. And I think you look at these two sides, I'm not going to say it could be an even game. I think Stevenage will have the upper hand heading into this one. But obviously, you can let me know your thoughts down below. I think Exeter City are just Exeter City are just missing a little bit of firepower, let's say. I think it might come later down the line in the season, but I think right now they just don't have what is necessarily needed for them. And I think Stevenage are going to maybe hit a spark after this one. It's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, if you want to see where they're sitting in the league table, make sure you go and check out my match previews from the weekend, match reviews, sorry, from the weekend. That came out yesterday, so make sure you go and check that out as well. But shall we get into the next game? Lincoln City and Wigan Athletic go head to head, as Lincoln City are the home side for this one. Obviously, both sides coming in off what I would call fairly decent results. Lincoln City taking a point away from heading down to Peterborough. Wigan Athletic taking all 3 and 4 goals with them as they beat Bristol Rovers away from home. I think both of these teams have not necessarily had the greatest of starts, but they're maybe finding a rhythm, let's say. You look at the previous 5 results, obviously it's 3 losses for Wigan Athletic, obviously losing to Morecambe in, I think it was the EFL Trophy, Lincoln losing to Chesterfield at the same time. You then obviously look at the Birmingham City defeat for Wigan, one which I think most teams are going to lose to Birmingham this year. You look at Reading as well, a 2-0 defeat. You then look at Lincoln City, who lost 2-1 to Barnsley, 1-0 to Chesterfield, and obviously that draw with Peterborough. But picking up wins versus Stevenage and Mansfield Town, where Wigan picked up wins versus Crawley and Bristol Rovers. I think this one's going to be really interesting. I think Skubala has potentially found a method that works. It's going to be interesting to see how that works across the course of the next few games. Obviously, some of these teams will have another international break in a couple of weeks. And I think it's going to be really interesting. So look then at the league table again when we hit that international breaks. It's going to be really, really interesting to see where these two sides line up. Bolton Wanderers are going to be looking to make some massive changes heading into this game versus Reading. They still haven't quite found themselves since that playoff defeat. They've been in a really bad spot pretty much since probably the start of this calendar year. Obviously, I think they started the calendar year sitting second, ended up losing out to Derby County for that. Then they lost in the playoffs to Oxford United, who finished 6th. It's been a really disappointing start to this campaign as well for Bolton Wanderers. Reading, on the other hand, I think they've had a fairly decent start. If we do just take a quick look at the table, if you want to go and have a look at it in full, we've got a full video talking about the league table and obviously the previous fixtures. So obviously Reading sitting in 12th, really good start for them in my opinion. Bolton Wanderers just 3 points behind, but ultimately have lost 3 on the spin, and that's really disappointing. Now obviously if we do look at the team form at the minute in the last 5, obviously Bolton have won against Barrow and Shrewsbury. I believe they were both cup games. Reading taking that 2-0 win versus Charlton, 3-1 versus West Ham, and the 2-0 versus Wigan, but losing to Wrexham and Leyton Orient. They'll be looking to turn around from that defeat, but so will Bolton Wanderers. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one shakes up. It could be a very, very interesting game. Burton Albion are still waiting for their first win of this league campaign. Now, despite going 4 league games with draws, they still are yet to win in the league. It's going to be interesting to see if they can do it up against Barnsley. Stevenage have showed them that it is capable after beating them 3-0 in the previous game, but Burton will obviously be looking for that first win. They'll be looking to find a formula that works in this division, and they've not quite done that yet, in my opinion. Now, it's good that they're not losing, but they need to turn some of those draws into wins. You look at Barnsley, went on a fairly decent run of 4 unbeaten themselves, with a draw to Northampton, a win over Sheffield United, a 3-0 win versus Crawley, 2-1 versus Bristol Rovers, but that 3-0 defeat put a little bit of the spanner in the works as they faced Stevenage. You look at Burton Albion, and I don't think their results are that bad. 3-3 with Mansfield Town. Should have won the game. Let's be brutal. Should have won that game. You look at the 3-1 win over Leicester's Academy. Again, Academy side, EFL trophy. Not necessarily one to shout home about. But a draw with Stevenage, I think that's a good performance. But it's a game they probably should have won. A 0-0 draw with Northampton, another game which they probably should have won. Then Rotherham, another game where they just couldn't create enough, in my opinion. Now, Burton Albion will be looking to fix that over the course of their training in this week, but they have yet to do that, and it's going to be really interesting to see where they do shape up coming out this weekend. Charlton Athletic face Blackpool at the Valley, and both of these two sides have been fairly decent in recent weeks. Now, obviously, you do have the 2-0 defeat for Charlton Athletic versus Reading, but other than that, they've won 3 and drew 1, and I think Charlton Athletic are going to be a force to be reckoned with in this division. They're currently joint on points with Wrexham and Birmingham City at the top of the table. It wouldn't surprise me if Nathan Jones is putting together a real promotion challenging team there at Charlton. And obviously you look at Steve Bruce taking over. They've gone unbeaten since their previous manager left, and in my opinion it's going to be a really interesting slog for both of these two sides. Obviously Blackpool having to turn around that poor start to the season, but they're getting ever closer to doing that. Charlton Athletic have started excellently. We'll just take a brief look at the table. Obviously sitting in 3rd, Charlton Athletic, Blackpool sitting down there in 19th, but it's going to be interesting to see these flip around. Obviously, Richard Keogh took charge of a few games for Blackpool, but it's now Steve Bruce at the helm. What can he do to push this Blackpool team forward? Huddersfield face Northampton Town, and I think this one is going to be a really interesting one. Northampton Town, in my opinion, are going to be sort of that mid-table area. Huddersfield Town certainly are going to be pushing for automatic promotion. Looking at the previous 5 results, Huddersfield lost 3 back-to-back games before beating Bolton Wanderers 4-0. A brilliant way to turn it around with that 4-0 victory over Bolton. And I think what we've got to do is we can't really take Bolton seriously right now. They've been a really poor performing side, and I think Huddersfield did exactly what was necessary. Obviously, a 1-0 win to Shrewsbury in there as well. But if we look at Northampton Town's results, a 2-1 loss to Wycombe most recently, then draws with Burton Albion and Barnsley, beating Exeter City but losing to Wycombe Wanderers again, and it's one of those for me where I think Northampton will be a stable mid-table side. I think Huddersfield will certainly be a promotion pusher, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this game plays out, because this could certainly be a banana skin. You look at the teams that Huddersfield has lost to this season: Walsall, Doncaster Rovers, and obviously I believe they're EFL trophy games, but it's certainly not what you want, is it? You want to be able to build that sort of winning momentum, and obviously it is quite early in the season, only heading into round 7 for this set of fixtures, and I think Huddersfield Town are going to do really well in the division this year. Now, if you have not done so already, we're pushing really hard on the channel to hit 1.3 thousand subscribers. So if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that red button and turn on that notification bell. Make sure you smash the like button and drop a comment as well to help push this video to other League One and Championship fans who are trying to keep up to date with everything that is going on. It's been a really interesting start to the season. I'm really intrigued to see where it goes from here. Obviously, there's a lot of games still to play. 40 games for some, 39 40 games for some, 41 for others, maybe 39 for a few. It's going to be really interesting to see how things shake out. Obviously, as we get closer to that busy November to December period, we're going to start to see how this league shakes out. Storylines are going to start to develop, and we're going to be keeping across it on this channel. Loads more to talk about in League One now as Mansfield Town face Shrewsbury at home. They'll have had 3 back-to-back home games, which is really interesting in League One. It doesn't happen very often, and Shrewsbury Town coming off the back of back-to-back defeats to Wrexham and Charlton Athletic. 2 defeats, in my opinion, which most teams will probably suffer in this campaign. Obviously, some teams will obviously get the better. That's just the joys of football. Now, Mansfield Town coming off the back of a win to Cambridge, and they'll be hoping to extend that to back-to-back victories. But if we look at the previous 5 fixtures, the only game which Shrewsbury Town have won is a 3-0 win versus Leyton Orient. They've had defeats to Huddersfield Town, Bolton Wanderers, Wrexham and Charlton. Mansfield Town, on the other hand, have taken draws away at home to Burton Albion. They lost away to Rotherham and Lincoln City, picked up a draw at home to Stockport County, and that 2-1 win in their previous game versus Cambridge United. I think this one's going to be very interesting. I think Mansfield are sort of on their way to finding a formula of what is going to keep them in the division, and I think for a lot of these newly promoted sides, I know there's a lot of people that are saying, well, Stockport should be pushing for promotion, which at the minute, based on their current form, absolutely. But I think the main aim for all of them is making sure they're stable in League One, making sure they are able to stay in this division for the foreseeable future. Whether they go up this year or next year wouldn't really make much of a difference. Obviously, it's extra money and things like that, but I think the main aim for all of those teams will be, firstly, make sure we're stable. If we have the ability to go up, let's go for it in January. But I think Mansfield Town are coming round to a way which is going to work for them. Shrewsbury are still looking for that way, in my opinion. I think they're going to struggle this season. It's going to be interesting to see how things go on in this game. Similar again to last weekend for Peterborough, in my opinion, where they're still looking to sort of find a proper rhythm. Obviously, they've not really had the greatest of form this season. They've not really hit a stride which many people would have anticipated them to do. But they're at home again this weekend, and they face up against Bristol Rovers, who also, well, I say also haven't had a great start. The starts, in my opinion, are very contextualised. You obviously look at a Peterborough who are going to be pushing for promotion and see that they're not sitting in those promotion places already and think, oh, they've struggled to get going. You look at Bristol Rovers, who have lost 3 on the bounce. Well, 3 with a win in between, and they've not been great. And both of these sides haven't been great in their own context, and I think Peterborough are still looking for a formula. Their players are still sort of developing into what Darren Ferguson wants. Obviously, they lost a big bunch of bodies this summer, and some really, really important ones as well. They lost their centre-back pairing. They obviously lost Harrison Burrows. That's 3 of their back 4. And obviously last season, halfway through the season, they lost Peter Kioso as well. So it's one of those for me where they've lost a ton of their quality and their important players that have sort of guided this team for years. And now it's time for them to move on and move forward. And they picked up a 1-1 draw in their previous game, but obviously they fell to defeat versus Wrexham. They did beat Gillingham, I believe that's an EFL Trophy game. And then obviously the 2 wins versus Exeter and Shrewsbury. Now, Bristol Rovers, on the other hand, 3-3 draw with Spurs, 2-0 defeat to Stockport, 2-0 win over Cambridge, 2-1 loss to Barnsley, and 4-0 to Bristol Rovers. Obviously, Peterborough come into this one probably in a better headspace than Bristol Rovers do, but that doesn't mean anything in this league, in my opinion. Anyone can beat anybody, and it wouldn't surprise me if Bristol Rovers came away with all 3 points in this one. I think I've got a few Peterborough fans who are down in the comments, and I'd love to hear your take on how long you think it's going to take to actually find your sort of winning formula when it comes to styles and systems, because when I'm looking at what Peterborough have done so far in this season, I think there seems to be a lot of changes. I could be getting this wrong, but it just feels as if when I'm looking, it seems like there's always a change to the back 4. There might always be a change to the front 3. And I think what happened at Derby was we got a couple of injuries, and then we got sort of a stable 11, and then we just went. As that 11 played together more, we just went. And I think that's what Peterborough need to do, is just stick to an 11. And obviously, injuries, suspensions change that. But I think that's probably the thing that's missing, just a bit of consistency in who people are playing with, where they're playing and things like that. And obviously, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll try and get back to every single one of you. It's sometimes a bit difficult because some of these videos get tons of comments. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if Bristol Rovers won, but for me, it has to be a game where Peterborough are favourites. Now, this is a big one for Rotherham United. Obviously, they beat Huddersfield a few weeks ago, and they head into this one versus Birmingham City, trying to take their unbeaten record away from them. Obviously, unbeaten in the league. I think they lost a cup game to Fulham. Yes, absolutely. But it's one of those for me where I don't quite think Rotherham have hit stride. I don't think Birmingham have either, to be completely honest. But I don't think Rotherham have hit stride. I think they've... In my opinion, they've struggled. I know Rotherham fans in the comments will say we've been unlucky with this, we've been unlucky with that, and I get that, but you have to take that unlucky and get a result and sometimes get a win. And you obviously, if we do look at the league table, there's a reason you're down in 17th. One win in 6 isn't great. Obviously, only 5 goals scored as well, so that's a massive struggle. Now, if we look at the previous 5 games of both of these sides, Birmingham City won 3 of the 5, only a 2-0 defeat to Fulham in the Cup, 1-1 draw with Warsaw, which I think they lost on penalties, 2-1 win versus Leyton Orient, 2-1 win versus Wigan Athletic, and a 3-1 win versus Wrexham, which was played on Monday evening. You look at Rotherham, 2-2 with Burton, 1-1 with Charlton. In my opinion, they're decent results, but Rotherham should have won the game versus Burton. They had plenty of opportunities to go and win that game, and they just weren't able to put the ball in the back of the net. Charlton Athletic, I think they're a really good side in this division. I said it earlier on, I think they'll be one of the teams battling for the title, if not the second automatic promotion place. I think Birmingham should win the title at a canter, really. Obviously, the 2-1 win against Huddersfield, really good team in Huddersfield. But then obviously the 2-1 defeat to Fleetwood and the 2-0 defeat to Wycombe Wanderers. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I can't really see past a Birmingham City win, but I think Rotherham may have the edge when it comes to shithousery, and hopefully they'll be able to put their front foot forward and finally pick up another good result, maybe their second win in League One. Stockport face Leyton Orient, and Stockport County, the only other team in this division. I believe they're the only team that are still unbeaten. Only other team in the division that are unbeaten alongside Birmingham City, and they face Leyton Orient, who have only just picked up their first win of this League One campaign. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one shakes up. I think Leyton Orient are going to have to build on that 1-0 win versus Reading. Obviously, you look at their results before that, lost 2-1 to Arsenal's Academy, 3-0 to Shrewsbury. They beat Millwall in the Cup 1-0, but lost to Birmingham City the game before that. Stockport have had an excellent start. 3-0 versus Blackpool, 2-0 versus Bristol Rovers, a 1-1 draw with Mansfield, which in my opinion was a really good result on the day, beating Accrington Stanley 4-1, and then a 1-1 draw with Crawley Town. I think both of these sides really are going to be looking up. Stockport are going to be hoping they can keep this unbeaten run going for as long as possible, and as well as Louis Barry is scoring, I don't think they'll have much problem. Leyton Orient are going to need more from Kelman up front. They're going to need more from those midfielders they've got in that squad as well to create more chances and score more goals. It's going to be interesting to see how this one shapes up. I can't really see past a Stockport win, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was a draw. Wrexham and Crawley go head-to-head as they are one of the teams to close out League One this weekend. Wrexham obviously coming off the back of that 3-1 defeat to Birmingham City, but still sitting pretty at the top of the table. Obviously, they've played an extra game than Birmingham, but it's going to be interesting looking into this one because I don't necessarily think that Crawley Town are a great team in League One, but I think they have put in so far this season some really, really good performances. Now, obviously, you look at Wrexham, will fall back-to-back before the defeat to Birmingham City, beating Reading, Peterborough, Shrewsbury and Salford. Crawley Town, 3 back-to-back losses in between 2 draws versus Brighton and Hove Albion's Academy. And Stockport, they also lost 4-0 to Brighton. First team in the middle of that as well as defeats to Wigan and Barnsley. It's going to be interesting to see how this script flips for this one because I think Wrexham certainly have the better squad available to them, but I think Crawley Town could shock a surprise. Wycombe Wanderers and Cambridge go head-to-head at Adams Park as Cambridge look to find their form in this division. They've been really, really poor so far. I think they're sitting at the bottom of the table with just 1 point, and that is absolutely correct. Just 5 goals scored with 1 point on the table. They need to sharpen up defensively if they're going to want to stay in this division. Obviously, Gary Monk was brought in with the intention of making them a better side, and I do think heading into this season they've gone a little bit backwards. Obviously Wycombe Wanderers on the back of a 4-game unbeaten run. In that they've beaten Rotherham, Swansea, they've drew with Blackpool and beaten Northampton. Only defeat coming versus AFC Wimbledon. Now you look at Cambridge, they've lost 3 of their 5 with 2 draws in there. A 1-0 defeat to Crawley Town, a 2-0 loss to Bristol Rovers, 2-1 to Mansfield in the weekend just gone, and then 2 draws against Bromley and Blackpool. It's going to be really interesting to see how this one shapes out. I'm really intrigued to see how Cambridge do this year, because I really thought they'd get better. I thought at the back end of last season, I thought they were really good when they faced up against Derby County, and it just doesn't quite seem that they've taken that into this season. It's going to be really interesting to see what does happen with Gary Monk and Cambridge. Now that is the preview all done for League One this weekend. It's going to be really interesting to see what does happen as we shape up towards, obviously, the busy period as we get towards November and December. Obviously, we're still sitting here in the middle of September right now. Obviously, I think it's round 7, I think it is, in League One. And I think we've seen some shocks so far with the likes of Stockport County, Mansfield, all performing really, really well. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out, because who knows where they'll be come Christmas time. It's going to be very interesting to see what does happen. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 1.3 thousand, and I can really appreciate the support on the channel. Hit the like button as well, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in my next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.